Cannabis saved my life at a very young age from a lot of mental health problems. I gambled. I was like, Mom, I want to become a weed writer. This community has blessed me like beyond belief. I published over like 70 or 80 articles with them, just interviewing breeders. I've never had a 9-to-5 that has been outside of this since I was 17 years old.
He threw a 1,500-person hash festival in Providence before legalization, and the line started the night before. I'm Jason Reposa. After 25 years in tech and cannabis, I host High Functioning to show what actually works. Today's guest is Robert DiVincenzo, aka Bobby Nuggz. He's a journalist, event producer, and co-founder of High Events with his partner Bailey. He helped pioneer underground festivals like the Secret Cup and Hexpo, and turned interpretasting into a global cannabis and food experience, and now hosts a new podcast called Carrying the Torch. We get into what it takes to build real community events, how to keep culture alive as the industry scales, and what the next wave of cannabis tourism looks like.
Cannabis tourism thing in the world is just the next wave. That's kind of where my brain's at right now with the look ahead is cannabis tourism and continuing to evolve. And I personally feel that South Florida will be the best cannabis tourism destination in America.
This is culture that knows how to scale. Let's dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Bobby Nuggz. That's been a moniker I've gone by for the last like 13 or 14 years of my life. It actually started as a pen name. First and foremost, I'm a journalist. That's how I got my footing in the industry about 15 years ago. I've gone on to become an author for Cannabis College, and I've published over 400 articles for dozens of magazines throughout the world. That's music related, cannabis related, and also psychedelic related. I'm an event planner and overall just a absolute cannabis fanatic. Cannabis saved my life at a very young age from a lot of mental health problems, and it helped me go clean sober off a lot of pharmaceutical drugs that they prescribed me on for bipolar, depression, PTSD, OCD, dream suppressants. So, for me personally, this has been my entire life for the last 17 years. I don't know anything else. I've never had a 9-to-5 that has been outside of this since I was 17 years old. So I've dedicated almost my entire adult life to the cannabis community, cannabis industry, and it's been interesting to navigate as more of a grassroots kid who started this when he was 22. I'm 37 now, to see it becoming a full-blown industry worldwide.
That's wild. So you just uncovered a lot there we can dive into. So there's so much behind your story, it seems. First of all, the moniker. How did that, there's got to be a story behind that.
There is.
So you're just rolling like a fat joint one day. You're like, oh,
I was a music festival kid, and I would be constantly going
what
to
was your festivals?
I like Wormtown, Strange Creek, Harry Brown's farm up in Maine. Gathering the Vibes in Connecticut really changed my life in a lot of ways. But I've gone to music festivals all over the country. But, back in the day, I was, a journalist under my real name, which is Robert DiVincenzo. I started writing for a magazine from Rhode Island. We went medical 06. And then right around that time, California was just taking off. So I started writing about Rhode Island's medical program and what was happening here for a California-based publication. That was like 09, called Cannabis Times. That just opened the floodgates for me. And ironically, at that time, Boston Freedom Rally started to really take off and legalization was in the air. That was kind of people's goals. So I kind of just dove head first. I was in a point in my life where I was either gonna maybe become an addict for the rest of my life or in jail. Something bad could have happened to me. So I gambled. I was like, Mom, I want to become a weed writer. And I was always a poet. I'm a high school dropout. At the time, I was just, bored. Wanted to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, right? So I messaged this dude on Facebook. I was like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Could I write an article for you guys? Nice. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. And I wrote my first article in Cannabis Times, 2009. It was published January 2010. Montel Williams is on the cover talking about his multiple sclerosis diagnosis, which he just found out about. So I was in a magazine, printed 100,000 copies with Montel on the cover. And I got a box at my house of hundreds of copies. Nice. And then as someone who, felt lost a little bit, it gave me that spark and that change.
Yeah. So you're saying that you could have been in jail or an addict or something like that.
I was an addict, and there were many times where, things could have really went south for me. And I have a lot of friends who have passed away from drugs. For me, it was cocaine. I started was a full-blown cocaine addict when I was 16. By 17 and 18, I was in and out of rehab, mental hospitals, almost 20 or 30 times. I spent over 100 plus days in out treatment facilities.
But did you why did you start cocaine at 16?
I had like a really fucked up childhood and like a deep, deep past, and it was all people around me's decisions, that affected my life terribly in a lot of ways. And
I set you on a course.
They did. Yeah.
Just because you were in that environment.
I always say I was born in the industry. I was born in the weed game. My mom, straight outlaw. My brother's father, my dad, both outlaws. Both of them dead now. So it's like they were growing weed in the 90s, and I was taken by DCOF when I was a little kid because of stuff like that. So there were so many instances that just started momentum in a bad place for me. And in high school, I was had a lot of IEPs and stuff like that, and just school wasn't for me. So by like my graduating year, 2007, I dropped out. I was like,
so you never even graduated?
No, never even graduated. I was like 6 credits short too, which sucks.
One of those deals.
Yeah, man, it was one of those deals. I'm a smart kid.
Yeah.
Uh,
Clearly, you're
book smart.
you're a journalist,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
and you're
sir.
very highly accomplished, which is why you're on the show.
Mhm.
So then there's more to it. There's a lot more
man.
to the story.
Yep. I'm lucky because at that time, for about 2 or 3 years until I was about 20, I was really lost and going through a lot of tumultuous times. And I ended up getting a mentor who really helped me a lot. Shout out Danny B. He was like a b-boy in Providence and a dancer. He's like, just call me, check on me, help me figure out like, my center and my value, my worth. And he's like, dude, sometimes you just gotta go for it. I break danced. I did karate.
Nice.
There's so many things I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I was a skateboarder for 9 years. That's one of the things I love the most, still to this day. And it all kind of came to like a head when I was like 20 years old. One of my very good friends ended up killing somebody, and that segued me. I was like, dude, I can't hang out with these people anymore, man. Like that hit so close to home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I was like, I need a change. And I was hanging out with all these terrible people, and I went back home, hanging out with my hippies from my hometown, and they dosed me on acid that same year. Yeah, 2010, 2009, I got dosed right at that winter, changing in January. And
was it a welcome?
Oh my God, it was an epiphany. I changed my life right overnight. And up until that moment, I was, like I said, I was on like tons of pills, 120 Xanax a month, Lamictal, Trazodone, and it was bad. They just kept switching me from
How does
stuff.
Xanax work? I hear about people, and then there's like different rap.
People abuse it.
About Xanax,
You know what I mean?
like that. But like
For me personally, as someone who was very high anxiety, manic depressant, it did help me. But I didn't want to become dependent on it. And I was like 19, having to get my liver checked.
Because your body has to process all this.
And I didn't feel like that was right. And that was
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really made me holistically change and go all in weed.
But you said 120? What does that even mean?
121 milligrams Xanax a month.
Milligrams
of 1 milligram. So you would take 4 a day, prescribed. And I was a walking zombie, and it was bad.
And you knew there's a change in your brain
and everything. And I blew up like a tick. I went up to like 175 pounds. I'm 5'3".
Right.
I was always like a stocky kid and worked out when I was younger. So when that happened, I couldn't even tie my shoes. And then, once I took that LSD, in like 6 months, I lost like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And just started becoming more healthy minded. And that was the same time I published my first article.
That's amazing.
Yeah, man. So it's just been a culmination of good times and good people. This community has blessed me like beyond belief.
Yeah, so you're a journalist.
Yes,
you're
sir.
writing articles back in like 2009, 2010. You're starting to kind of like figure out, where your path's kind of going to be, because that's one of the things with paths, right? You make these decisions and it totally changes the trajectory.
100%.
So I find like there's a lot of this world, and a lot of people sometimes have to help themselves if they don't have that mentor. And one of the biggest things you can do is just change your environment. Like get out of there, do something.
I recommend anybody who, is going through stuff in their life to change their environment.
Just get out.
1 degree, that can change so many great ways,
right? So, but weed was part of your life
since day one, yeah.
Right. And so now you're in the medical scene in Rhode Island. You're writing articles for Cannabis Times.
Yep, Cannabis Times. And right at that time, I got my medical card, 2011. I was one of the first like 10,000 patients in Rhode Island with it.
Nice.
And I had assigned 2 caregivers, and all of a sudden I just had all this access, to great genetics and to breeders and to people. Then, Relief magazine started 2011 in Rhode Island. We went 5 years hard copy print. It was way ahead of its time. We kind of ushered in an era of like medical marijuana activism. And that's what we used the publication for 5 years in Rhode Island. And that opened a ton of doors for me. And I think I published over like 70 or 80 articles with them, just interviewing breeders. So that was my thing. I've talked to them all,
Right.
Big
That's
Wooden
awesome.
Cheese, rest in peace, like Subcool, like all the way down the line. Just get to ask these guys questions
Right.
about the strains they created that we were all growing, because it was
So
also new.
Do you think so? And let's another couple questions there. So do you feel like did you like the medical days better than what it is kind of become with adult use?
Yes, 100%. For me personally, I was never really for legalization. I was always for decrim and medical because I was afraid of, the commercialization of
Or big
cannabis.
pharma, some
100%.
tobacco
And
company
as we've seen
kind
it happen
yeah.
with MSO brands and, just the quality level of the industry because of that has been so low.
Yeah.
I think that it's made a lot of people, a lot of brands, a lot of hardworking individuals suffer.
Right. Well, because people they could just flood the market with some myths, and they're like, well, it's going to get me high, so I'll just buy it.
Exactly.
Without realizing that there's like a deeper meaning to it all.
The quality of everything in life is what people should be after.
Right.
We're here for a better quality of life.
Right.
So why would you want to be smoking terrible cannabis? But I came from an era where I was selling brick mids. You know what I mean? Like spray
bricks.
who knows what.
Who knows what PGRs and all that stuff.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So when I first seen like the medical hit Rhode Island, and it was like some White Widow, some Rhino, the DJ Shorts Blu-ray, weed is not as good as it used to be.
Do you feel like there's when you had access to all these breeders, do you feel like they were like very welcoming to the questions, or do you think some were maybe more standoffish to feel like I'm not going to tell you that because of my
great question. In that era, like of the times, it was a lot of behind the scenes. A lot of these guys were running and had moved from Massachusetts or from Florida, to go to California, go to Colorado and pursue the industry in a legal way. So a lot of them are just outlaws, man. That's how
they had their genetics.
They had their strains.
They've
ordered them and they risked their freedom for it every day,
Yeah.
paying for electric bills for 20, 30 years, as long as I've been alive,
Right.
just to keep a mother plant around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I sometimes I think we forget, how much went into that. It really was.
Long ago.
No, it really wasn't. But the last 10 years, we've gotten complacent in a lot of ways with, just the amount of accessibility there is, that we forget that, there was a grower who was running from the law to keep a strain around for years that we all enjoyed.
If without that person,
it would have been gone. And there are many strains, that have been extinct just from, that grow house getting raided and then cops ripping all those plants out. That was the last known pheno of that specific strain you'll ever see again.
Dude, you have such a crazy amount of knowledge on that stuff. I feel like, and we're going to get to your pod and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great series, like Lost Genetics.
Oh,
It's like cracking death.
so true, man. Like,
doing like a
shout out to
trip
Strain Hunters
in Arkansas.
No, Franco.
Oh, there's a show that does.
Yeah, man. Strain Hunters, like, they're the first ones. Arjun and Franco, rest in peace, Franco. They were the first like YouTube cannabis moguls.
Didn't one of those guys end up dying?
Franco Loja,
Because he got like malaria or
something malaria.
Like that.
I think on the Congo. He was searching for the Congolese. And those guys were like in the trenches, dude. They were everywhere you could find, from the Hindu mountains to Afghanistan to Congo to Jamaican sativa. They went there, they sourced those seeds, they flew them back, they shipped them back. Argent still, they created and birthed a whole new wave of genetics in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And the land race is like, I like this. I'm starting to see a lot of haze coming back around because I love haze. Back in the mid 2000s, haze was some of the best bud you could buy.
Right. And it has nostalgia to it.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Look, it went away because, you got to remember, like, all right, I want to grow the quickest flowering plant I can, because quicker I can harvest it, dry it, the less trouble I can get in, I can get the harvest out.
Get it out.
So you don't want to go for a 23, 22-week flower in Washington Heights haze, you know, where you could get a 7.5, 8-week Gorilla Glue. You know what I mean? So, but now it's come full circle again.
But do you think that's like partially marketing too? Because Gorilla Glue, GG4, you see that like the gorilla silhouette, and you're like, oh, that's cool. I want to that's what I want.
You know, I think that's one of the best things about our community is the marketing, the bunch of marketing geniuses. And we took notes from all these forefathers before us from the food industry that changed America as we know it.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of ways, that wasn't the best decision, because there have been many lawsuits, you know, for strain names and this and that. Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like, but hey, you know, it all built the foundation blocks of like what we know, right? Because there may be people, my mom would always talk about the Acapulco Gold and the Thai stick. What we know, and the new age kids, if you were born in 2000, more than likely you smoked on glue. That was your entry.
Right.
You know?
So that's gonna be nostalgia for them in like 20 years. Like, oh man, I could get some grow.
100%.
Right.
And there's a whole clothing lines and tons of stuff you can
build. That's the thing. That's the marketing, right? So that's why it's like you come up with a strain name, and it is something special. You know, the plant obviously has to slap. If it doesn't, then it's not kind of. People are gonna buy it.
I'll tell you, you're gonna know.
You're gonna know it, right? Then you put some good marketing behind it. You can get that kind of.
Really I was there for like the Berner and cookie wave when I first started.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
I mean, 2012, I had first met Bern when we were. I was on the tour bus with Be Real for Cypress Hill. It's super fucking awesome experience. But he had busted out like all these jars of stuff, all numbers on each one of them. So they were all just phenos he had chosen from him and Jigga, whoever had it. And he let me try one. He's like, "Have you smoked the KK yet?" I was like, "Dude, I've been hearing about this KK from everybody. I love Wiz. And you know, Berner gets you a strain that's going to be proper." So he like let me pop this jar of KK. Dude, it blew my mind. It was honestly some of the best gas I had seen grown in like a long time. And you know, we just chopped it up for a while. And all right, he's gotten a lot of slack because, you know, in a lot of ways he has sold out to like the beast. You know what I mean? But people forget that first and foremost, Berner was a hustler. You know, money was his number one goal. It wasn't the legacy. You know what I mean? So his legacy is now what he's focusing on. You know what I mean? But he get to that position and that point, there aren't many people who have done that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's one of the more well-known ones that I know of, especially from the business aspect of it. And like when you think about it, like that whole brand now, though, as it's evolved, obviously they had so much swag.
Yeah, they did.
Stuff like that.
I think that, you know, he watered himself down too much, which is also something too thin. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where like you could only go to the Bay to get cookies. Like the official, like if their crew didn't let it out, you couldn't get it anywhere else in America. You had to go to the Bay. You had to go, or you know, a lot of those packs would trickle down to LA. You know, or to Vegas a little bit. But you know, when cookies first hit the Northeast, I was at like New York Harvest Festival 2012 when Richie Loyalty IC Mag shout out won the New York Harvest Festival with the cookies, and he brought like a pound through just to show everybody. And we just walking around with his bag, and it was blue. Like this dude was walking around with this blue pack of like flower. I was like, dude, I haven't seen weed that looked like that since like Purple Haze. So I was like, damn, all right, they got something truly special with that Thin Mint, that Girl Scout. That Girl Scout was really serious, but it didn't yield. It would be just these rock hard little nuggets. So again, that cookies went on to so many strains have been bred with that, and OGKB, you know, that cookie.
Yeah, because when you find something that's really good, but it doesn't yield, you're like, okay, what am I crossing it with, right?
Yeah, I think that's also been a huge problem is we're looking for single traits in strains, you know, and that's crossbred out other traits that, you know.
Maybe would have been desirable.
Yeah, you know what I mean? 100%.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
You know, breeders have been trying to get flowering times down. They're looking for certain terpene profiles. So while eradicating anything that once resembled what we used to know. So it's a double-edged sword a lot of the times with the breeding and that type of stuff, because they have to discard so much to keep. You pop in 10 or 15 phenos of one, you keep 2 or 3. 3 you don't usually keep 3.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe there's 2 phenos of something because they're both like really different or super special. you disregard everything else.
But you have to grow. I don't really know too much about the breeding process, but you still have to grow those 15 plants into maturity.
100%. Just get the pheno test.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that people don't understand that, like, that's an extremely hard process to do. So there are,
Very
as a breeder, if you're not testing your own stuff, it really is. Like, I just made this post on LinkedIn like yesterday about breeding in the industry, because there are thousands and thousands of breeders now. It's hard to keep up, man. And back in the day, there was like a dozen of these guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they all knew each other, and they would all share certain things, or if they didn't like each other, you know how it goes with that type of stuff.
Well, that's what I was asking, if they were like open to like sharing some of these things, because they're like, oh, if this other breeder reads the story.
Not usually, it depends on the crew, 100%. Because there's a chem crew, there's a sour crew, cookies crew. It's all these couple growers who had these warehouses and source these certain phenos. Sometimes like they didn't even breed it. It was just an accidental pack that there were seeds in it, and they grew those seeds, and they were able to find a pheno, something similar to what that was.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is kind of how Chemdog came and P-Bud came on the Chemdog on Grateful Dead lot. So there's so many stories, and like it's hard to find
the seeds. You never know what you're gonna get.
Man, that's the beauty of it, right? Like you never know what you're gonna get, really.
Yeah, I love that stuff. So that definitely, and I had Greg on as well.
Yeah, shout out to Chemdog.
Yeah, shout out to Chemdog.
Legend.
And so we did reminisce about that stuff, because it really is. I remember back in the day in high school, I was introduced to it. I wasn't really crazy into it or anything like that, but I was in groups of people who were, and a few of my friends were dealing and stuff like that. And when they get seeds, they try to pop the seeds almost every time. They're like, oh my God, we just got it, and there's some seeds in it, so let's go do something with it. And
a little
half it was.
I could feel it in my belly. You get that little excitement.
Yeah, exactly. A little
it's
thing.
like,
but we inevitably, it would be like, and then it's like, all right, where are you going to plant it? Like in the woods or something like that? And like,
I miss those days of guerrilla growing.
Yeah.
My family's owned the same property for over 100 years. And we have about 60 acres abutted by 500 acres of state sanctuary land that can't be built on. So I realistically have like 550 acres in my backyard. We're dirt bikers, we're four-wheelers. And,
he's ripping back there.
My Uncle Kenny, rest in peace, he used to grow some of the best Sensimelia in like all of northern Rhode Island. Some of the first skunky seedless weed. I would always be like riding in the car when I was a kid and smelling skunk in the car. I really didn't know why.
Right.
And I right on the windowsill, and like my mom would have like seeds sprouting everywhere, and paper towels and like roach clips. And I was, I smoked my first joint with my mom when I was 15, and my stepfather too. Like he tapped me on the shoulder on Christmas Eve. He's like, here, shh. He like let me smoke with him. You know what I mean? So I was like in a household where it was very accepted.
Yeah.
Both my parents had severe mental health problems too. My stepfather, my whole life was schizophrenic. I was a terminal brain injury survivor from a Harley accident. So cannabis helped him immensely too. So my entire household, it helped all of us be better.
So when it came from like after the journalism side, I know you've done a bunch of stuff since then.
Yeah.
You were obviously writing all these articles, I guess, where would you want to pick up the story here? Like,
2013, I flew out to Colorado for the Extract Artist Heal the Nation Bass, thrown by Daniel DeSales of Top Shelf Extracts and Nicotine from Essential Extracts. And it was a who's who in the hash community. Really, I always loved cannabis so much, but when I found hash, and it changed my perspective on things in a lot of ways. I've been strictly concentrates for about 13 years.
Wow.
So I've been dabbing since, 2011.
It's so funny because when I think of dabbing, I'm like, that just came to Massachusetts like 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, part of that wave where, I was extracting BHO, and a lot of people in Rhode Island ended up, catching on to the techniques and trying it at home. And, the high intent things are task force agents.
We were just trying to figure
out. Oh yeah, we were all figuring out the tech, man.
It was like, how do you make diamond? How do you make soft scent? All this other stuff too.
We were in that era of like, glass tubes and blasting. And that same year, 1 year later after I went out there, we ended up entering a competition, me and my mentor, and we placed, and we were the first ones in the Northeast coast of America to bring back a Cannabis Cup. Anybody out there who wants to refute that, you can get down with me. 2013 went to the Extract Artist Heal the Nation Bash, and then Top Shelf Extracts through the Secret Cup. We won the Connoisseur's Choice at the Secret Cup that year in Colorado.
What was your contribution to the actual product?
So I helped water it from the start, trimmed it, processed it in the tubes.
So the actual cultivation part of it has been the processing of it as well.
My mentor, he sourced the strain. It was his grow. you know, everything ended up coming back to him. You know what I mean? I'll always give those props where they're due.
Absolutely. Well, what I'm saying is that, like, it seems like you've got these skills. Obviously, you know a ton about breeding genetics from the perspective, even the journalist perspective, like having spoken to all these people in all this other stuff. Would you ever consider making your own again, kind of thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I've never made my own strain. You know, I wasn't like a big time grower, but being able to work with a breeder one day.
So that's like,
Yeah, you know, but that was for hash. So we grew the flower and we processed it into BHO, and the strain was Vancouver Island Haze, Rhode Island strain. You know, it came from Vancouver down to here.
oh, Vancouver Island,
yeah,
Vancouver Island,
yeah,
Vancouver, Rhode Island.
exactly. We never really knew what it was called, so we just called it that, and it was like a super lemon haze pheno. It was crazy, like orange lemon terps. It was nuts. But that was like at the time a huge game changer for us because it was a domino effect. We went out for Extract Artist Heal the Nation Bash, met everybody. Then we entered the competition a few months later in Colorado, and we ended up taking Connoisseur's Choice. And then those guys were like, "Hey, do you want to throw a secret cup in Rhode Island?" Because this had happened in LA, this has happened in Colorado. And I was like, "Dude, let's go." So I found a venue, and in 2014, I threw the first Secret Cup Beast Coast in Providence, Rhode Island. We had 1,500 people show up to this event, over 100 vendors. It was a black market legacy house.
What year is this?
2014 in Providence. Yeah, it was way ahead of its time. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I woke up,
200 people.
dude. I woke up the morning of the event and got there like 7 a.m. and there was a line. Already people camped out from the night before. They camped on the sidewalk.
Wow.
They're like 30 heads. I was like, dude, okay, I guess this is how it's going down. We ended up seeing how tickets progressed. We already had like 600 or 700 tickets by like 11 a.m. or something that day. And we had booked Immortal Technique to come to a performance for everybody in the middle of the city. We had like 80 vendors. Just it was a glass spectacular. We had the best glass blowers in the world at this event in Providence in a parking lot. You know, we had 20 states from America. Dude, it was nuts. You know, and
was that this first event?
it was the first event that I ever threw.
Wow.
In 2014. And
how do you even top something like that?
I don't know if I ever have. You know, it kind of was one of those things where it's like if you were there and you were part of it, you were touched. Right. And it gives you momentum. Yeah. You know, and like some of the people who won that event, shout out Something Better Concentrate Co. He's still rocking. A lot of those guys have gone on to become leading extractors across the nation. And, you know, we were all part of this like movement and wave, but shortly thereafter, all the cards crumbled, you know, because we were making BHO and, you know, I was getting a lot of notoriety across the country.
Too much, maybe.
Yeah, it was kind of scary, you know, and at that point, you know, my mentor had gotten tipped off that, you know, the High Intensity Drug Task Force Agency was coming in Rhode Island to go after BHO manufacturers. And we got rid of all our shit. And like 3 days later, it's like, I'm not going in. I'm chilling at home. I'm not going to go in. I'm not working. Of course, they came and they fucking raided us. And they made a huge example out of him. And he did not deserve it. This dude is a good dude, you know. And it was one of the first 5 indictments for BHO making in the country. And one of my other buddies was also wrapped up in this. They gave him like 9 felonies, charged him with like 3,000 or 4,000 pounds. They ended up converting everything too. It was just a catastrophe, you know.
Concentrate.
It was concentrate. So a couple kids in Newport ended up making it home, and they leveled their house off the foundation.
I was gonna say, I think that's the biggest thing that I always heard about BHOs.
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous. Those volatile gases are not anything to play with. Whenever we would make it, we would only do it outside. Luckily, we had roof access to our building. But a lot of people, you know, a majority of the times, you know, for me, we never had. You know, we really thankfully knew what we were doing, and we're extremely precautious. We also were like the leading extractor here in the region at the time. So we had a standard we tried to upkeep for everybody. Luckily, nothing ever happened. But you know, I have very good friends that I still talk to all the time that blew up vials of oil in their face and they still got burns.
If you're into cannabis, entrepreneurship, or just like hearing from people who actually build things, check out High Functioning. It's real talk with founders, operators, and big thinkers. No fluff, just game. New episodes drop every Friday, and you can subscribe and listen at highfunctioning.show. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, man. You know, and at that time, like right after, someone ended up the same venue we threw that event at, the owner of the building found out about making BHO, and he went and burnt down a federal building to the ground, and it caused that incident and so many other incidences that, you know, just changed a lot of people's lives. So after that, ironically, the same year Rosin Tech hit. So you could then make dabs in your apartment with a hair straightener.
Yeah.
The same
Rosin.
time
That's hilarious.
we were using these volatile gases and people were hurting themselves.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, here's my chance to change my approach.
You're like, I'm gonna go to Walmart and buy 50 hair.
You know, and what we did was, you know, I formed like a legion of solventless extractors here in the Northeast. 2015 came along. I threw my first like seminar called Focus Concentration.
Okay.
We had 100 attendees, all interested in learning how to make solventless extractions at home.
Yeah.
I had 5 panelists.
Were you doing like full ice water hash?
Oh yeah, straight up
stuff.
I made my first bubble run like 2009, 2010.
You didn't stick with it. You were like,
oh, I was the whole time. But once BHO hit, I was like, it took everybody by storm, and it was just so clean. And I was trying so hard to make dabbable bubble hash at the time, and no one would give up the tech. You know, there was 2 or 3 people in the USA who knew how to do it to the steps you needed to really make it that much better. Because solventless is a broad spectrum of a term. You know, that describes bubble hash, that describes keef, that describes rosin, but full melt bubble hash. Shout out Bubble Man, Mila.
Bags.
Dude, that stuff used to blow my mind seeing pictures of it. And I wanted to learn how to make that. And yeah, that opened up the doors for me. And you know, hash became such a huge part of my life in the 710 culture. The 710 movement of July 710, the holiday we know now, just formed in 2014. The same year all this was going on. Dude, it was crazy for me. And it was just all happening at once. It was like
something happening.
It was overwhelming, the advancements at the time. And Rosin Tech hit, and we were teaching people how to make rosin home with your hair straightener.
Right.
You know, instead of using volatile gases when no one had C1D1 labs or
right.
any safety precautions,
Right.
really. The game changed again. And 2015 was an awesome year, man. 10 years later, here we are now, and rosin's absolutely overtaken the world.
Yeah.
PuffCon was yesterday. PuffCon was yesterday in LA. They had thousands and thousands and thousands of attendees all there in the name of rosin.
Nice.
You know, and I went to Barcelona this past year and got to experience like...
Is that Cannabis?
Yeah, you know, we got to go to Cannabis, and this was this past March. Got to experience like the hash culture worldwide, how it's come full circle everywhere. And
so you're still traveling. You're still getting out there all the time.
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there's ever going to be a day that I do stop doing this.
Yeah, that's wild.
I hope not.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. You have it in you, it seems. You're just going to keep on going. So when it comes to the hash style back then, you eventually learned the tech well enough to be able to pull it off, because I make terrible hash.
Yeah, you know.
I've tried it. I got little washing machine, you know, the little one you...
Oh, yeah, man. Shout out Providence Polish. He gave me my first set of bubble bags and washing machine like 2011. And I was just... I went all in. That was one of the things I immersed myself most into, because I had access to all these amazing growers and no one was making hash. Everybody was growing.
Right.
I was like, all right, well, screw it. I'm going to make hash. That's what I want to do. People, man, there's so much to me. Like, I started my first hash brand in the East Coast in 2010. Sapphire Extracts. I had my own logo, had my own jars. Right. I was working with multiple medical growers all throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, commissioning myself for the material I would wash for them. So I was kind of...
Was that under the medical license at that point?
I was one of the first ones.
Go in.
Just go into their own warehouse grows, or they would bring their material to me. And I would, you know, have a standard of how I wanted it prepared for me and how I want it frozen. I had multiple chest freezers, and like, I don't know, it just happened so quick.
Do you think you were like too far ahead of the time though?
You know, I definitely think I was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, because even back then, people were probably like, I want my RSO.
Yes, 100%.
Because I'm the medical patient and I need this particular thing. But did rosin move fast back then?
It didn't. It took a couple years, because BHO had such a strong footing in America at the time. You know, and everybody thought that was because there are still many scientific aspects to BHO that are cleaner than rosin. Fats versus lipids and whatnot. You know, it is a much cleaner scientific process of making a essential oil over you know, a double refinement, heating something and pressing it. You know, you're definitely going to get fats and lipids in there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is always to me an inferiority, you know. But
will that still happen with full melt though? Like,
so
here's the thing. This is great. It's like, and this is an argument that I had thing with Ben McCabe.
I was just like, a legend.
How many How many stars can there be?
You know,
It's like 4-star, 5-star, 6-star.
I always say that there's the 6-star rating system is what we need to go by, but I always say that there's a 7th star.
There's a 7-star.
You know,
I think that there might be.
You know, I always say there's a 7th star. People like to argue with me on that. It's semantics, you know what I mean? But there's always like, you know, these guys just had the Culture Cup up in Maine like last month, and the full melt entries that were entered in that competition were some of the best bubble hash I've ever seen in my entire life. You look in the jar there, it was just impure. It looked like it was just
heads.
BHO.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't even like the cleanliness, you couldn't even ever defer it. So people have really refined their techniques and they've sourced the strains because that's really the most important thing with rosin.
Well, I think that
and with whole melt.
What I was going to go back to was the fact that like even those early medical days, you probably had access to really great growers, but maybe they were growing for hash,
100%
flower.
You know, so that's the thing now. You're growing for resin,
right?
You know, and there was a chart that was released like on IC Mag back in the day. It was called the Full Melt Clear Dome chart. There's full melt, there's full melt clear dome. So a full melt is not as good as a full melt clear dome, and that's a resin gland.
Yeah, the actual back-home head.
100%. Sometimes a full melt, it might be a little more waxy or a little more milky, and it will leave a little more residue, you know, but it will still dab, and that's probably a 5-star. Sometimes with the full melt, you might even get a 6. But with the full melt clear dome, it's just bursting these huge bubbles. The heads, the little trichrome heads are just bursting these huge bubbles. Dude, it's crazy to look at under a microscope.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, is that when people start bringing out the microscopes or the loops or whatever, and they're just looking at these heads, and they're just like, that's clear.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it all comes down to the trichrome heads.
And well, be like, this is it.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot of trial and error. Back in the day, that list of full melt clear dome was strains, and there were 30 strains on that list.
Right.
So each one,
you had a good chance.
Yeah, you had a good chance of getting absolutely superb quality resin if you were to wash it in bubble bags.
Right.
And sour diesel was like the #1. Chem sour OG forever, like some of the best strains you can get your hands on.
I actually don't know that much about. So when I think of chem, I think of Greg, obviously, but I don't think of it as hash. I always think of it as flour.
As flour.
But it could wash really well.
Man, yes, and BHO also. Chem strains translate so well to concentrates, especially that, like, particularly that Chem 4.
Interesting.
You know, there's Chem Sister, there's 4, there's Dog, there's Star Dog, there's JJ, and other breeders have gone and create their own dogs. You know what I mean? So there's so much now, but they all translate so well to hash. Any dog, you're gonna meet some good hash. That's for sure.
So getting back to the event side though, so like, so when you had these events, obviously you've gone obviously making tons of hash and stuff like that, had that event, did you know you wanted to do more events at that point?
Yeah.
And you kind of went like
2014 after the Secret Cup East Coast happened, the momentum I had was insane. I didn't have Instagram yet. People got telling me to get on it. So I had someone make me an Instagram 2015, like about 6 months after that event. And before I knew it, I had like 10,000 followers on there in like a year. And it was just like, all right, well, I feel this now.
Right.
So I decided to do my own event. It was called Ghouls and Globlins. That was in 2014. This will actually be the 10-year anniversary of the event. We took 1 year off after Hexpo. October 25th is the after party. Ghouls and Globlins this year. Ghouls and Globlins actually birthed Hexpo.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I thought Hexpo was the event that you were going to refer to.
No,
Ghouls and
Globlins. Yeah, I've always been on wordplay. It's how I derive a lot of my inspiration. Some of it's corny, but some of it works out. Like interpreting, thank you. Halloween Cannabis Expo. Like my brain works in unique ways.
I love these names, and that's why I was getting to. So like all these events, so not all these events, but like as you're starting to like figure out your next steps, are you thinking to yourself, because adult use is kind of around the corner now.
Yeah.
Now 2014, 2015, 2016 is adult use gets passed in Massachusetts. And when did Rhode Island actually pass?
Not till a couple years ago.
Yeah, like a couple years ago.
Yeah, Mass beat us by 6 years or something like that. I think we did 2022 or I forget right now.
So, but are you immediately thinking to yourself, I'm going to focus on events and I'm going to go for it? Or are you like, I still have my hands in the medical program, I still have my hands in the legacy market? Like, where are you thinking right now?
You know, for me at that point in time, I went all in on educating.
Education.
Yeah, and went just started speaking everything I could and teaching people about the culture, the history, concentrates, anything that I felt like I could tell the story of is kind of what I ended up doing there.
Like being an educator?
I love being an educator, yeah. I also love being taught and learning stuff. I think that's the best part of being an educator is you're constantly learning things.
Right, exactly. And you're passing these lessons
Yeah,
on, right?
and I learn from everybody.
Right.
Everybody we come across.
100%.
There's so many unique people in our community, like Ben McCabe, Sweetgrass Solventless, like all these just heavy hitters, dude, who like got something to offer.
Right,
It's kind of cool.
And I love it because you're right though, because it's like, and there's a bunch of unique characters too. You know what I mean?
I feel like if you didn't have, maybe a normal lifestyle, you had a much higher chance of joining the cannabis community post 2016. Before it became an industry, and once it started to become an industry, there were a lot of people in high school. Well, I want to do that. Who are now owning social equity licenses. It's crazy because they got in trouble when they were
Exactly. They
for probably Gorilla Glue.
and for GG4. So you mentioned this before too, and I wanted to bring it back. Community versus industry.
Yeah.
Like when you think of your events, are you thinking, because it started community 100%. Because it was before the industry.
Yeah.
Right. Like where does your head kind of flow with that stuff?
It always lands back to community.
Community.
And I feel like without community, industry will never be what it's supposed to be. And we've seen that happen over and over again. And I think that building relationships with people is most important. All these people just aren't a number or a customer to walk through the dispensary door to me.
I think that's so overlooked by a lot of people who are in the industry, is that like, and I see this happening in kind of newer markets as they're coming online, where they're more transactional. And I'm like, you don't understand like how small this community really is.
Yes.
There's a lot of really cool people in here you can talk to, and if you just hang out with, you don't have to sell them on every single moment, And people are coming in fresh with green eyes, and they're like, this money everywhere. Let me just go transact a bunch.
Yeah, we see how that's turned out.
Right, exactly.
So
I here for the long term.
Exactly.
Like
I always pride myself in the look ahead. So I've been able to envision myself 5 years down the line. Every year I'm doing this since we started talking in 2014. I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to be able to operate this 4 years from now successfully?
Right.
So, it's always a learning curve.
You can have
and it always goes back to the community and the culture.
Right.
I'm a culture kid.
So when it comes to the ghouls and goblins, as well as Hexpo, interpret tasting. I mean, I feel like I'm missing a few.
Yeah, we high-end events company.
Yeah.
Bailey has brought so much legitimacy to my life. She helped form an LLC and really just bring us to that next level we needed to go. Help me kind of harness all this energy and stuff I had going on,
I'm glad you brought up Bailey. When did Bailey enter the picture?
Bailey and I met when we were like 19, but I was really not in a good spot in life, and she was way out of my league. But she was always so cool and was like an amazing singer. She smoked fire. She knew fire weed.
Right.
So I was like, this girl's cool, man. Shit. But I didn't, I'm respectful of women. I didn't try to hit on her. We're just like, this girl's cool. I'm like, what's up, man? Nice to meet you. Want to smoke a blunt? Cool.
Right.
And we became social media friends over the years. And like 2018, she popped back into my life and just changed my life even for the better.
So when that happens, when that occurs, is Bailey like 100% in?
Oh yeah,
I literally could just ask.
Oh yeah, she's all
sitting right in front of me.
she was all in 100%, and
she was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, everything. She's been throwing events with me now for several years. Her and I had just had our 7-year anniversary in July.
Hey,
that's my wife, my best friend, my business partner.
I love it.
Everything. We're super lucky to live this life together, and the community gives us that opportunity every day. And it's cool to be able to come up with ideas and concepts like I do. My brain's crazy. I never stop. I'm always going.
Well, we're going to definitely dive into 5 years from now, because I do want to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But like, so Bailey joins up. You guys are doing all these events together. Culture first, right?
Culture
community first.
Yep.
Are you looking for external guidance sometimes with this stuff?
Yeah, there's a couple people that I've really looked up to in the industry, and they've always kind of had my back with stuff, and they do a lot of things out west and all over the world, and I just try to again, learn from everybody and figure out how I can take a page from everybody's book and write my own story with it, right? So that's been like a key factor in my success. I think in the community, in the industry, is that, I'm always out here trying new things and, trying to bring interesting concepts to the people. Interpretasting was our first concept that we developed together under High End Events Company. And that
Wait,
we're,
walk me through that. Like,
Yeah.
how does that work? Interpretation.
Interpretasting is basically, you're interpreting what you taste. You're interpreting the
What do
term.
you mean? Is it like one of those social media videos is what I immediately think of, where
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I'm going to take this straw, I'm going to sip out of it. Oh, that's Coca-Cola.
Yeah, basically, like, it kind of
Is it really like that?
Yeah, that's what,
Right.
interpretasting was a word, but it's an event. And at our event, we, 7 years ago, before, the wave really hit, pairing cannabis with dinners, with fruits, with vegetables, was something that,
That's what I think of as like more of like a dinner experience.
yes, exactly. Interpretasting is a pairing experience, and it's
Right.
a senses experience. So you're using your taste, your smell, and your senses to enjoy cannabis and food.
And you're hiring like professional chefs
Yes,
or
we
something
work with
like
chefs.
that you flipping burgers back in the
Bailey and I are both chefs.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
100%. And we're food safety certified, and I've been in the food industry for years. Pizza was like always my thing, you know what I mean? But food is everything to us and my heritage. I'm Sicilian, and my grandmother and my mother are both amazing cooks. And I've been in the kitchen since I can remember. I've been in the
Absolutely.
kitchen since I was like 3 or 4 years old making meatballs. I'm not even kidding. But we love food, and I wanted to conjoin our passions of cannabis and food together, and that birthed Interpretasting. We went on to do, this is our 6-year anniversary in next April. Over 50 sold out tastings we've done together. And we've worked with, oh man, dozens and dozens of growers all over Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We brought the event to Spain this past March, and we threw our first Interpretasting with the Q agency in Barcelona. We got to work with multiple growers and extractors in BCN. So, now Interpretasting has Barcelona.
Oh, BCN.
Yeah, BCN. Now Interpretasting has gone on to become a worldwide recognized event concept, and that's kind of like,
They franchising it out, or are you?
no, we would like to, with social consumption happening around the corner.
Yeah, we
Um,
talk about that.
I think that would be a cool thing for some of these people to do who have access to these event licenses, to pay homage to some of the people who were here first. And maybe, maybe we could find someone who would like to host some Interpretastings with us down the
Do
line.
you ever hold your own license, or
Yeah, I think that would be great if the opportunity arises.
it has to be the right fit?
Yes, I wanted this mess of the industry to kind of settle itself down before I'd want to get a footing in it at all. I don't want to.
It's because you're patient, though. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to rush in. There's
Exactly.
no green rush in your head.
No.
It's your life.
For me, it is my life. It's like sometimes I feel that way. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta do something. And like, bro, chill. It's all good.
Focus. Yeah.
Paid your dues.
Right.
You're still out here working. It's all gonna work out, right? That's just kind of where my head's at. Cause I'm about to be 40 in a couple years. To say I've been doing this for 20 years, that's trick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, when they were in their 20s, they didn't bet on becoming a weed journalist.
Yeah, especially back then.
So even back then, people used to think I was nuts.
Right. Well, I can imagine that, because it just seems such a foreign concept.
Yeah.
Because you're like, is this ever going to be something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, every time you hear about adult use, you're like, oh, it is something. And then if it's like the green rush comes in, right?
Yeah.
That's when you get the landlords charging twice.
It feels good at the end of the
Right.
day to, have bet on, myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a dispensary owner. I may not be making millions and millions of dollars a year, but it feels good when I go places. People say hello. People show me their weed. That's all I ever wanted.
Exactly. You got it. You got your life set right now. This is fantastic. Back in your BHO days, though, has that you must have been making pretty good cash back then. Have you matched your salary of your BHO days or exceeded it at this point?
Man, those days were just crazy. Everything was just like, pounds back then were ridiculous, going for
4,000 a pound.
So imagine what the concentrates were going for.
What?
You know what I mean? For me, it wasn't always like a money thing. It was
No, I
more,
know, but I'm just thinking. Out
Yeah,
loud,
it was-
like, man, you must have been making so much.
it was crazy, man. It's a shame, honestly, to see what, the quality and prices were to what has happened with legalization. They should have been also reaping the benefits of 4K pounds too.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just everything's timing in this game, man. It's
I think
crazy.
people are just immediately they're rushing to get the next dollar.
You
And
know,
they don't.
and not only that, like we were helping people, we were donating,
Yeah.
and still donate so much, you know. And but back then it was different. It was about the patients, and it would, you know, to be able to help someone who had HIV or to help someone who had Parkinson's disease, source quality RSO, quality flower, good dabs. It was rewarding.
Yeah. And I think that definitely goes without saying for the people who are doing it the right way, because there's obviously bad operators out there.
Yeah, man, there are.
So you got to be careful with that.
100%.
Like, you know, we always try to pride ourselves on creating the best product we can every single time, because we know, and we hear stories ourselves about like how much people benefit from even our products, which are made with distillate, to be fair.
Yeah.
But people have constantly emailing us about like how much it's helped them, right?
Yeah.
So those stories go super far. We share those stories all the time in our internal Slack channels, because we're just like, this is why we do it. This is why we're here today. It's
those reminders, you know, gotta feel good.
Yeah, they absolutely are.
Navigating this industry, you know?
So yeah, exactly. Industry. That's the thing. So I'm in the industry because I have a license here, of course. But like, you know, again, it's about that long-term vision, right? And so let's talk a little bit about your vision, because I do feel like you got all these different events, and Hexpo's coming up. When is Hexpo?
October 25th, Seekonk, Massachusetts, Teamwork Sports from 12 to 7. We're expecting 1,000 attendees this year. We've seen some great growth.
Yeah, and actually, that's what I was going to go to. So when my question about the industry was like, how do you balance your events now? Like, because since it is, you know, Seekonk's kind of not that far from here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, would a company like ours be welcome there? Be able to
100%.
participate?
We're looking at, there are almost 40 of the best brands Massachusetts has to offer this year. We've been sponsored by a dozen plus dispensaries throughout the state. Our event is 21 plus. So it's all 21 plus consumers. We're giving away over 1,000 free tickets to industry in Mass. We're also $1 of every ticket sold to Hexpo this year will benefit Last Prisoner Project.
Oh, that's great.
So we'll directly be benefiting nonviolent cannabis offenders in prison. As a culture kid, that feels really good to do. And I am looking for a cultivator or brand who would like to match our donation this year. Shout out anybody if you're interested in doing that. Please reach out to me personally. We're looking at probably $1,000 donation from high-end events in Hexpo. So if you want to match that, helps people out, let me know.
How did you? Because there's always been blowback. I'm not going to call out LPP. I mean, I'm calling out LPP only because I've heard like these various stories of like, well, the money doesn't really go where it's supposed to go and stuff like that. Like, how do you judge those things? Or did you look into it? Did you call?
Yeah,
like,
you know, I've looked into it a
what's
lot.
going on?
And I met Mary Bailey when I was in Barcelona and got to feel her out a little bit, and we got to hang out. And after I went home and just, you know, I researched the brand and what they were doing, and it seemed like a charity that I could get behind. We also are very close with Freedom Grow, Randy Lanier. I don't know if you know Randy. He'd be a great guest to have on the show. Randy did over 27 years and trafficked more metric tons of cannabis in the United States than almost anybody ever has. He just got out about 5 or 6 years ago. He was a race car driver for NASCAR, you know, rides around, race of Lamborghinis and stuff. And I bet Randy Lanier, Florida boy. But, you know, he's also doing amazing things with Freedom Grow, and their reputation is incredible. So I definitely, you know, we used to work for Parents for Pot, but again, people had said similar things. So you got to feel people out, you know, and if, you know, those owners are out there networking, buying tables at events, sponsoring, putting themselves out there on the front lines, showing their faces, to me is a green flag.
Yeah, it's a good signal. Definitely. Yeah, because I do find it like even when we were doing our plan for positive impact, it's a requirement by the CCC for us to fill out. Part of the, you know, some of the things I've heard other people do is like, oh, we're going to donate X amount of dollars to this charity every year and stuff like that. And I was looking around for a charity when we were going through our application process, and I literally couldn't find anybody to give the money to. They would not, nobody would take our money. It was the weirdest thing. But this is also 2019, 2020.
It's still taboo to some people.
It's like they won't accept any cannabis money because it also could jeopardize their federal grants, things like that. So it gets really weird. But LPP obviously has none of those kind of liabilities, so they're fine. They're fine taking that cash. But it's, to me, it's always been such an interesting thing because you hear about charities taking advantage of certain situations or whatever, or maybe all the money's not going to the people who need it the most. And there's like,
I guess that's the idea of a nonprofit, is that not necessarily every dime goes back to the charity. You know what I mean? If you're working a nonprofit correctly, it seems like there are tax deductions that you would want to utilize to further the nonprofit, which means you need to travel to other events.
You have to. There's certain expenses with it.
You know, there's certain things
Still
that,
be 100%.
and these are the things that I think people are questioning
Yeah.
because they don't necessarily know how a nonprofit or a business works structurally.
Right.
You know,
The only charity that I participated in recently, or the biggest amounts anyways, was for the Pan Mass Challenge, PMC, which goes to Dana-Farber. So every dollar you raise as a rider, 100% of it goes towards Dana-Farber.
that's amazing.
And then there's like an entry fees, like $250, something like that. I can't remember now. And so there's like other fees that they collect to kind of run the organization.
Yeah, and offset.
And then 100% of it goes to Dana-Farber.
That's super smart also, because I don't see a lot of people doing that structurally, you know, for their nonprofit.
Right.
You know, so
it's a clean separation. It's super
you know, I totally agree. And, you know, moving forward, I think that nonprofits are going to be extremely important for the industry as a whole, you know, because at the end of the day, it's cannabis. We need to be giving back. Helping people. And Dana-Farber and foundations like that, you know, I think are, you know, top of the line. We need to be helping cancer research institutes and stuff.
100%. My father was treated there, and I've definitely been in there a little bit myself. So, shout outs to Dana-Farber, shout out cancer research and cancer researchers and all the scientists and doctors behind it.
Damn right.
So take me through. So now we're talking events. We're doing all these things. So obviously you're community focused, but you do have industry participation.
Yes.
At a lot of these events. So when you start thinking about the future, though, the next 5 years, so when you say like every year I'm thinking of 5 years, right? So like, where does Bobby Nuggz, Robert DiVincenzo,
you know,
where do they?
I think one of my new focuses lately has been cannabis tourism.
Okay, like Jimbo.
Yeah, you know, Jimbo is a good friend of mine, and I've recently I've given Jimbo some great opportunities to speak at events all over the place, and he deserves to be in those positions because he's done so super unique, man. Shout out Tie-Dye Tour Guide. That's like the cannabis tourism thing in the world is just the next wave, and it's happening now. You know, PuffCon was yesterday. There's been events in Colombia this week. You know, I have friends in Thailand who are doing stuff every day.
You say it's global at this point, so
it's
you're
global.
traveling internationally for these days.
Yeah, so who knows what's going to happen, but my ultimate goal is to continue to travel to other countries and help progress their social consumption and to progress their cannabis movement and their cannabis industry just by destigmatizing and normalizing the plant. And I think that traveling places is one of the best ways now to destigmatize because, you know, we're past that era in ways of, in America mainly, where, you know, people don't look at it like they used to necessarily now.
Yeah, well, it depends on what state you're in.
100%. You know, that Bible Belt, some of the southern states need to get their asses in line. But you know, I'm a Florida kid. My dad lived in Key West my whole life, and a lot of my cousins are from Daytona, Fort Lauderdale. You know, one of my cousins just passed away in that armed robbery that went wrong, and it's still unsolved right now. And you know, if he had access to cannabis more, he wouldn't have he probably wouldn't have chose the other way of life. Like I had the opportunity to.
Yeah, and there's real consequences.
Yeah, man. I hope Florida goes rec soon. I think that would be it would be great for society as a whole down there. And I personally feel that South Florida will be the best cannabis tourism destination in America. You know, Miami has everything Vegas has. It has everything LA has, and it's the Caribbean, and it's art, and it's food, and it's culture. It's like the energy down there is just crazy. So
they have art Basel, but they have Terp.
Yeah, we just booked our flights. We'll be back down there for the third year this year for Art Basel and Terp Basel. Shout out to guys at Terp Basel. They do amazing work down there.
Yeah.
And they're really leading the charge for cannabis tourism because they've had 15 countries come out for Terp Basel, and they're doing something dope, man. I'm glad to be a part of it in any way.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I talked to those guys recently. They were looking to advertise on the newsletter that I wrote.
Yeah.
And it's just, like I said, international at this point. So yes, the US definitely has a head start.
Yes.
But there are definitely some pockets of resistance.
Jamaica, and you know, once things change a little bit in other countries, it's just gonna even be better for America. I've been to Hawaii 2 or 3 times and got to experience cannabis culture there. We got to be part of some expos and everything there. So just to see like the different flair from place to place of what they're known for.
Right, yeah.
You have all these different strains, like out in Hawaii, they're about like sour sop and all these crazy fruity strains.
Right.
That makes like it's Hawaii as fuck.
Right.
Acai, like they got their shit. Florida, they're about that black Cuban haze and like, you know,
Right,
it's cool.
right.
Back here at home, we love our chem dog. You know, we love our cookies because it hit New York so hard. So that's kind of where my brain's at right now with the look ahead is cannabis tourism and continuing to evolve.
And
And
I think interpret tasting is kind of like your best bet into that world kind of thing? Or
no, I think that my best bet is just me, my personality, and
just being there?
just being there and being myself, my raw, authentic self, and just being interested in people's product and what they got going on and going out and buying tickets and supporting events in other countries. I think that's going to be my key and our key as event planners. First and foremost, you got to feel people out. You can't step on other people's toes. In Hawaii, you can't just go out there and be like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm throwing this event. Good luck. You know what I mean? It's about building that network. So we hope to continue to build our network in other markets.
It's almost like
the world's
Cannabis and BCN. It's really just like you go there, you get the feel of everything, and you're like, okay, we're gonna hold an event here, and it's almost with the blessing of like the BCN.
Yeah, you gotta have the blessing in the city.
Like,
this past year was really bittersweet for Barcelona because it was the last year that Cannabis will ever be held in Barcelona. The mayor actually came in and stopped it after 20 plus years of positive cannabis tourism. They have 150 clubs in Barcelona. He stopped Cannabis. This was the last year we were there. If you will ever be able to go there again.
I heard that story.
Yep, they moved it to Bilbao. Bilbao is about 6 hours north of Barcelona. They have 6 clubs. So it's, you know, but that's going to open the doors for somebody else to come in now and maybe do something smaller, more intimate.
Cannabis was big.
Dude, like that's the largest cannabis event in the world.
Is it really?
It was crazy. Like, you know, and I have someone who has been to like the Boston Freedom Rally, like the second largest cannabis event in the United States, in the heyday where there was 60, 70,000 people on the common. It was reminiscent of that, shoulder to shoulder, you know, and it was cool though. It was a good send off. It was very bittersweet for Barcelonians. And I'm glad that we got to experience it because we flew out 2020 and we were there for 24 hours before Trump made the announcement for COVID and all the clubs shut down on us and all the shops shut down. And
you were in Barcelona.
Yeah. Yeah. We were like, we thought we were going to get stuck there. I had made arrangements with friends to stay with them for however long we needed. Luckily, we were able to fly home through the UK back to the USA like 5 days after he made that initial announcement for COVID.
Wow.
So we ended up not getting to experience anything out there.
You flew in and you had to fly right kind of thing.
You know, so this last trip, it like was the last Cannabis. We got to throw our first event in Barcelona.
Right, exactly.
We did all these like 18-course dinners, Michelin star, and like did a big.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we did a big.
Good send off. Yeah. So like other like in the 5-year plan, are there other kind of like what's the number one spot outside of America that you're looking at right now?
You know, for me personally, I would really, really like to get to Jamaica. You know, that's just I would like to check it off the list. No, I never have. And the cannabis tourism there in particular is amazing because they cater so much to USA tourism. Again, Virgin Islands too. I'd like to go US Virgin Islands. That's still US territory. And Colombia or Thailand, I think, man, like, and Germany. Germany just had an event recently for hash, and they love their dabs. When I went to Barcelona, it was all people from Germany, from UK, and from Holland. So everybody was speaking 3-4 languages. And
well, I think Germany had starts and stops, right? Because they were like, all right, we're going to go adult use this year, and then it like got popped.
Thailand too. Thailand just rolled back.
Thailand rolled
like
back
a few months back. So
what are we doing?
I don't know, but still, you go out there, and I think that, you know, it's going to be more about medical cannabis. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to have a medical card. It's going to be more about holistic wellness instead of an overflow of branded brands trying to establish themselves. Because that's what was happening in Thailand really quickly was they were just being infiltrated by American brands. Like,
there's a cookies sign when
man, I had like 20 plus friends who booked flights to Thailand. I'm like, damn guys, like getting it in, man, out here, you know,
making moves.
And then a month later, all those opportunities are null and void now,
right?
You know, because none of those licenses will ever be able to be grabbed until they maybe. Go wreck again.
Well, that's right. I always feel like, and that kind of goes back again, culture versus industry.
Yep.
Which is, I've seen so many brands come into Massachusetts, pop up for like a month, and
Yeah.
you never hear about them ever
Yeah,
again.
like, well, I'm going to Jersey now.
Oh, exactly. I'm just gonna go to Jersey.
Go to Jersey. I'm gonna go to New York. Like,
Right.
there's not a lot of skin on the bone out here right now. And if you're planning to launch a brand in the Massachusetts rec market, I highly recommend, community first.
Yeah. And that's some of the guests that we've had on here. We're launching brands in Massachusetts right now. They focus a lot on focusing on one community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Julio Vasquez was just on
Julio's awesome.
Ultra Premium Gas,
Yeah.
UPG. He's just like, it's for my Latino brothers and sisters. It's just like, boom, here we are,
Shout out to all the equity brands out there. Like, also, I think that there's another thing that I should make sure we mention is that those brands should be paid attention to first. Especially now, a lot of them are fucking good, dude.
Yeah.
There's no like white labeling some mediocre BS no more.
But I feel like that's the big separator, is that like quality is obviously the immediate separator, because that's like, you can get that first purchase from somebody, but if you do them wrong, they're not gonna buy it again.
Yeah, and that's
So
everything. You
first
need
one.
consistency. You want to get in as many stores as you can handle.
Right.
In order to do
As
that,
you can handle.
you need a sought after product, right?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, again, get too far ahead of their skis, and they just start thinking about like, oh, I want to be in like 300 stores.
Yes.
And it's just like, you can't support that. You have to build that up gradually.
It sounds crazy, and I know it happens.
Yeah.
Seems like a lower percentage type of thing for people. You know what I mean?
Well, it comes from scale. It comes from time. Again, for us, it's a long-term commitment. And so for us, it's just like, we're growing at the pace we're going to grow at. And we're going to try to support every store we can as best as we can with such a small team.
Yeah, man. It looks like it's paying off well for you guys.
Yeah, we're doing okay. But I do think that, like, when sometimes I'll talk to dispensary owners, and they'll ask me like, oh, the guy down the street's cutting, your prices by so much. And I'm like, I can't like control I don't run that store, right?
So many variables, and that just comes back to your brand awareness. And
exactly. Well, I feel bad sometimes, because I've said to them, and it has proven out, that if you drop us because we're not willing to like force them to raise their prices, it's like they're like, it has to be exclusive, right? And they have these crazy interests like, well, you have to be with us or nobody else.
Yes, that's Rhode Island's market. Rhode Island's market's so unique.
And I feel terrible, but I'm like, if you don't have our product on the shelves, you're gonna get a lot of people to go to that store.
Yeah, 100%. You're gonna literally the business.
So it's like, when you're growing and scaling, it's like we have limited resources, just like a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I do say, if you can make it in Massachusetts, kind of like the old New York saying, you can make it kind of in any state at this point, because it's so restricted.
I completely agree. I have good friends who are still millions of dollars just in their investment to get their facility off the ground before they've even sold a single gram.
Yep.
So
that's how long it takes, though. So just gotta sit on it.
It takes a lot of balls,
money, and
resources and network, man, and much respect, for anybody out here who's navigating those processes, because it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. So that's why I keep on going back, just to loop back to this last point, which is, and we can start to wrap, which is the idea of, was it better in the medical days, in a sense? Because it's like, now you got all these, external, like, big money influencers.
I'd say that the only way that it was better back then is that the community was so much more tight-knit and focused on a common goal. And that was just enjoying ourselves and smoking weed.
Yeah.
And now, the community is way bigger, definitely super tight-knit. There's a lot of core people out here who really support. But, our common goal has kind of divided, in a lot of different ways. Some people are starting their own businesses. Some of us are doing this and some of us are doing that. But at the end of the day, I guess it all comes back to the plant, right? And that's everything.
It always comes back to the plant. Any last comments or thoughts or anything else you want to leave us with before we wrap?
Yeah, man. If you're interested in getting involved in the industry or the community, just put yourself out there. Be a good person. I'd say that establish meaningful connections has been something for me that has worked great over the years, and genuinely care about the people around you and the things that are going on, because there's a lot of shady shit going on all the time. You got to know who to support and where to put your heart and put your energy. If you do that, you'll be successful.
I agree 100% with that one. Do not get mixed up with the
Thank you for having me on the show today. It's an absolute honor, man. I love how you operate. your team, your crew, and I'm excited to see where you take things for the future too.
Appreciate it. Yeah, same, man. I can't wait to see that in the next 5 years.
Let's
Super
get it, brother.
exciting.
Wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
Absolutely. Same to
Thank you
you.
for having me today.